I came home to find a massive trampoline set up right on my lawn, half on my property, half on someone else's. When I tracked down the owner, they smirked and said, "It's just a few feet, no big deal." Instead of arguing, I waited until they went to work and moved it entirely onto their side. That evening, I heard a furious shout, "Why is it taking up my whole yard?" I smirked and thought, oh, so now property lines matter? I never imagined that a simple patch of grass could become the center of such a storm. But here I am, caught in a whirlwind of neighborhood drama that all started with a trampoline. It was a bright Saturday morning, the kind where the sun filters through the blinds, casting playful patterns on the floor. I was savoring my first cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, when something unusual caught my eye through the front window. There, dominating my well-manicured lawn, stood a massive trampoline. Not just any trampoline, this was a behemoth, complete with towering safety nets and gleaming metal poles. The perplexing part? It straddled the property line, with half of it firmly planted on my grass and the other half on my neighbor's. Setting my mug down, I stepped outside to get a closer look. The trampoline's black mat stretched taut, its springs glinting in the sunlight. It was as if it had sprouted overnight, a metallic mushroom in the middle of my yard. My mind raced with questions. Who put this here? Why on my lawn? And more importantly, without asking? As I circled the intrusive structure, I noticed Rick, my neighbor of 6 months, tinkering under the hood of his car in his driveway. Rick was a man in his late 30s, with a perpetually greasy baseball cap and an air of casual indifference. We'd exchanged polite nods and the occasional small talk about the weather, but nothing beyond that. Taking a deep breath to steady my rising irritation, I approached him. "Morning, Rick," I began, striving for a calm tone. "Do you know anything about this trampoline that's appeared on our lawns?" Rick straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag that left streaks of oil on his already stained jeans. A smirk played on his lips as he glanced over at the trampoline. "Oh, that? Yeah, thought it'd be fun for the kids. It's just a few feet over the line, no big deal, right?" His nonchalant attitude ignited a spark of anger within me. I counted to 3 before responding. "Well, it's actually on my property too. It would have been considerate to discuss it with me before setting it up." He chuckled, a dismissive sound that grated on my nerves. "Come on, it's just a trampoline. Let the kids have some fun." I clenched my jaw, recognizing that pushing the issue now might escalate things unnecessarily. "All right, Rick. We'll talk later," I said, turning back toward my house, my mind already formulating a plan. That evening, as the neighborhood settled into a quiet lull and the sky painted itself in hues of orange and pink, I noticed Rick and his family loading into their SUV, presumably heading out for dinner or an evening excursion. Seizing the opportunity, I called up my friends, Mike and James, who lived a few blocks away. "Hey guys," I said when Mike picked up, "I need a hand with a little project. Think you can come over for a bit?" "Sure," Mike replied without hesitation. "What's up? I'll explain when you get here. Bring some gloves." Within 15 minutes, they arrived, curiosity evident on their faces. I led them to the backyard and gestured toward the trampoline. "Rick decided to set this up without asking, and it's half on my property. I want to move it entirely onto his side." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Bold move, but I'm in." "Me too," James added. "Let's do this." We donned our gloves and approached the trampoline. It was heavier than anticipated, the metal frame resisting our efforts. But with coordinated pushes and grunts of exertion, we managed to lift and shuffle it inch by inch. The grass beneath protested, blades bending and snapping under the weight. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only 20 minutes, we had successfully relocated the entire structure onto Rick's lawn, leaving my side blissfully empty. Stepping back, we admired our handiwork. The trampoline now dominated Rick's yard, leaving little room for anything else. I could already envision his reaction and felt a twinge of satisfaction. "Thanks, guys. I owe you one," I said, clapping Mike and James on the back. "Anytime," Mike replied with a grin. "Let us know how it goes." They departed, and I retreated inside, anticipation simmering beneath my skin. The next morning, as the sun cast its golden rays over the neighborhood, I was in my kitchen preparing breakfast when a loud, frustrated shout shattered the calm. "Why is this thing taking up my whole yard?" Peering through the window, I saw Rick standing in his backyard, hands on his hips, staring incredulously at the trampoline now monopolizing his space. I couldn't help but smirk, a sense of vindication washing over me. "Oh, so now property lines matter?" Moments later, there was a brisk knock at my door. I opened it to find Rick, his face flushed with irritation. "Did you move the trampoline?" he demanded, his voice tight with barely restrained anger. I met his gaze evenly. "Yes, I did. Since it's your trampoline, I thought it should be entirely on your property." His eyes narrowed. "You should have talked to me first." I raised an eyebrow, the irony of his statement not lost on me. "Like you talked to me before setting it up?" He opened his mouth to retort, but seemed to think better of it. With a frustrated huff, he turned on his heel and stomped back to his house. From that day forward, Rick kept his belongings firmly within his property lines. The trampoline incident became a cautionary tale in our neighborhood about respecting boundaries and the importance of communication. And as for me, I enjoyed my unobstructed lawn, a silent testament to the lesson learned. I thought it was over. After I moved the trampoline and Rick stomped off in a huff, things were quiet for a few days. Too quiet. I figured maybe he'd realized he was wrong and would just let it go. But no, that wasn't the kind of person Rick was. 3 days later, I woke up to the sound of metal clanking. I looked out my bedroom window, and my stomach dropped. Rick was back at it. This time, he had set up a large metal shed right next to the property line. And just like the trampoline, part of it crept onto my side. Not much, maybe 2 feet, but it was enough. He did it on purpose, no question. It was his way of getting back at me for moving his precious trampoline. I walked outside in my pajamas, arms crossed. Seriously, Rick? What is this? He didn't even look up from what he was doing. It's a storage shed. Got a good deal on it. Needed the space. It's on my lawn. Rick gave a half shrug. Barely. Just a few feet. No big deal. That phrase. No big deal. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was poking the bear, trying to see if I'd snap. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I started documenting everything. I took photos, measured the distance, made sure to record the exact placement of the shed. Then I headed to the county office and requested the property maps. Sure enough, my suspicion was right. 2 feet of his shed was sitting on my land. That's when I called the zoning department. Explained the situation. They told me they'd send someone out for a site check. It took a week, but the inspector finally showed up. Nice guy. Asked questions, took measurements, wrote notes. I didn't see Rick come out, but I was sure he was watching from behind his blinds. 2 days later, I got the official notice in the mail. Rick had 15 days to move the shed, or he'd be fined for a zoning violation. I smiled. Finally, some progress. But Rick? He doubled down. Instead of moving the shed, he built a fence. A tall, wooden, ugly fence, right on the property line. Except this time, he didn't go over. He played it smart. But it was obvious what it was, a spite fence. He wanted to block my view. Make my side of the yard feel boxed in. Petty? Yes. Effective? Also yes. It was like living next to a child with a toolbox. I tried to ignore it. Tried to stay calm. But every day, looking at that wall of cheapwood, I felt my blood boil. Then, one morning, I noticed something else. My internet had been cutting in and out the last few days. I assumed it was just the provider having issues. But when I walked around to the side of my house, I saw the cable line, the one that ran along the property line, was hanging, almost cut. Not torn. Not chewed by animals. Cut. I didn't have proof. But I knew who did it. I called the cable company. They came out and confirmed it. Someone had sliced the line with a tool. That was it. I filed a police report for vandalism. It didn't go far. Without video or an eyewitness, it was just a report. But it was on record. That mattered. I also installed cameras. Then, I waited. I didn't have to wait long. A week later, I caught him dumping a bag of yard waste over the fence onto my side. On camera. Clear as day. He looked right at my house when he did it. Like he wanted me to see. I called the police again. Showed them the footage. This time, they paid him a visit. It wasn't a major crime, but it was enough for a citation and a firm warning. The best part? While the officer was talking to Rick, I stood at the edge of my lawn, arms folded, watching. He glanced over at me once. His smirk was gone. And still, I didn't say a word. This was far from over. I knew that. Rick wasn't the kind of guy to quit when he was losing. But neither was I. Now it wasn't just about a trampoline or a shed. It was a war. 2 weeks passed after the police gave Rick that warning. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would cool him off. But of course it didn't. If anything, he got sneakier. The first weird thing was the lawn. I always kept mine neat, mowed every Sunday, trimmed around the edges. But one morning, I walked out to find a large dead patch right along the fence line. Brown, crispy, and clearly burned out. I bent down, touched the soil. It reeked of chemicals. At first, I thought maybe I had over-fertilized. But then I noticed the pattern. It was too clean, like a straight line had been drawn along the border. I checked my cameras. Nothing. But the spot was just out of their view. Classic. So I got smarter. I added 2 more cameras, angled just right to catch any movement on the far sides. A full net now. Then something worse happened. One night, around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by a loud clang. Metal on metal. I ran to the window and saw movement by the shed. It was dark, but the motion lights on Rick's garage flicked on for a second. Then they went off. I slipped on a hoodie and went outside with a flashlight. Nothing. But I noticed fresh scrape marks on my side of the fence. Long, jagged lines across the wood. Like someone had dragged something sharp across it. He was trying to intimidate me. The next morning, I found a new surprise. My trash bins had been pulled out to the curb 4 days early. The lids were open, contents spilled. And something had been added. A bag of dog poop. Not mine. I don't even have a dog. Again, the cameras caught nothing. Just someone in a hoodie walking by at night, face covered, dumping it, and walking away. I knew who it was. But proving it? That was harder. So I changed tactics. I started talking to the other neighbors. Turns out, I wasn't the only one dealing with Rick's nonsense. The family behind him had complained about loud music and parties late into the night. The older couple 2 doors down. Rick had once parked his broken-down truck in front of their driveway for 3 days, blocking them in. No one liked the guy. He wasn't just my problem. That gave me an idea. I organized a neighborhood meeting. Just a casual barbecue, I said. Come by, bring a chair, let's talk about the block. Almost everyone showed up. We grilled burgers, made small talk, and once everyone was settled, I brought up the Rick problem. I laid it all out. What he'd done, what I had on camera, the police visits, the zoning violations. And to my surprise, they shared their own stories. Turns out, Rick had been slowly making enemies all over the block. By the end of the evening, we had a plan. One of the neighbors, Tim, worked in real estate. He offered to help me pull the full property line survey. Another, Rosa, had a friend on the city council. She said she could ask about nuisance complaints. Someone else mentioned getting the local paper involved. We weren't just dealing with one man anymore. Now, it was the whole street. Rick had no idea what was coming. He thought this was just a petty feud between 2 neighbors. He didn't realize he'd turned the whole neighborhood against him. And I still had one final card I hadn't played yet. The real twist? The previous owner of Rick's house had actually offered to sell me the lot a year ago, before Rick moved in. I'd passed on it, but the paperwork and boundary proposals were still on file at the title office. I went back and pulled them. Turns out, the fence Rick was so proud of, it was built 6 inches onto my land. He thought he was winning. But now I had proof that the very wall he put up to spite me was mine. And I wasn't done yet. I waited until I had everything lined up. The fence plans, the survey, the camera footage, and all the neighbor complaints. I didn't want to make a move until I was sure Rick wouldn't be able to wiggle out. Once I had it all, I filed a formal complaint with the city. I included the photos, the report from the zoning office, and most importantly, the property line survey showing that Rick's precious fence wasn't on the line. It was on my land. The city took it seriously. A few weeks later, Rick got a letter. Then a knock at the door from the city inspector. I watched from my porch as they walked him out, pointed at the fence, and explained the violation. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw Rick's face. First confusion, then anger, and finally, shock. He tried to argue, tried to talk his way out of it. But the inspector just handed him a paper and left. Rick stood there for a long time, staring at the fence like it had betrayed him. He had 30 days to remove it. 30 days to tear down the thing he built out of spite. 30 days to undo his own petty revenge. He waited until the last week, of course. Then, on a hot afternoon, I sat outside with a glass of iced tea while he started pulling the panels down. One by one. Hammer swinging, jaw clenched. No music. No yelling. Just the sound of his fence falling apart. He didn't look at me once. But I wasn't done yet. Once the fence was gone, I sent a friendly little letter, through my lawyer. See, technically, Rick's shed was still within the violation zone. After moving it once, he had shifted it a little, but part of the foundation still touched my land. The zoning office had missed it the first time, but I had the updated photos and the survey to prove it. He had 2 choices, move the shed again, or I'd file a civil suit and have it removed at his cost. Guess what he chose? He moved it. This time, not just off my land, but all the way to the back corner of his yard. It was barely usable now, half covered by tree shade, ground uneven. It tilted slightly to one side, like even it was tired of Rick's crap. The cherry on top? Remember the neighbors? They were fed up too. After our meeting, 3 of them filed noise complaints. Another called the HOA about his junk car parked on the street. A few more filed formal nuisance reports to the city. Within 2 months, Rick had torn down a $3,000 fence, relocated a shed, been cited for noise violations, had to pay for a new internet cable line, lost the trust and respect of the entire neighborhood now. His lawn is quiet. His kids don't play outside. The trampoline is gone. Rick barely even comes out of his house anymore. As for me, my yard is clean, peaceful. I grill on Sundays again. Neighbors wave when they pass by. Even the grass has grown back where he poured the chemicals. Sometimes, I catch him peeking out from behind his blinds, watching me mow the lawn or water the flowers. But he doesn't say anything. He knows. He messed with the wrong guy. And now, he's living inside the mess he created. That's what real revenge looks like. Quiet. Legal. Satisfying.